Most women believe they understand men until they meet one who bleeds in silence, until they witness a man who wakes every morning with a heavy chest and haunted eyes, yet tells the world he is fine. The truth is, most men do not fear battle, failure, or even death. What they truly fear is being seen, being exposed not as strong or powerful, but as fragile, wounded, and in need of love. This is the silent burden they carry, the unspoken ache that shapes their choices, their anger, their emotional, distance, and even their love. Men do not talk about emotional pain. They weren't trained to. Society built a cage around their hearts and called it masculinity. From childhood, boys are told not to cry, not to feel, not to break. They are taught to replace emotional expression with performance. Strength became a costume they were forced to wear long before they understood what it meant. Eventually, the mask fused to their face. But the psyche never loses what has been repressed. Jung warned that what is denied becomes shadow, and what becomes shadow eventually seeks expression, no matter the cost. For men, this unprocessed pain leaks into their lives disguised as detachment, anger, sudden withdrawal, emotional numbness, and unexplained distance even from the woman they love. He stops talking because somewhere along the way, life convinced him he had nothing left to say, nothing safe to reveal. And yet, beneath the survival armor, something inside him still longs not to be fixed, but to be understood, longs not to be saved, but to be seen without judgment, longs for a place where he doesn't have to perform masculinity, but simply exist as a human being. But he hides this longing, even from himself, because to admit it would mean confronting the ancient wound men inherit, an unconscious belief. I am only worthy when I am useful. This is the silent pain most men carry. He will not confess this pain. He fears that the moment he opens the door to his inner world, he will collapse and no one will come for him. So he keeps building walls, hardens his tone, distracts himself with work or physical pursuits, sometimes addictions. He does not do this because he lacks care or emotional capability. He does this because he fears emotional vulnerability more than suffering itself. To truly understand a man is to see not the warrior first, but the boy he once was. A boy who learned early to swallow his tears, who discovered that affection had conditions, who witnessed love withdrawn the moment he failed to perform. Shame became his silent companion. The weight of unspoken expectations turned him into a lone traveler in his own psyche. Over time, he internalized the voice of judgment. Feel nothing. Be stronger. Be unbreakable. No one cares about your sadness. But there is something every woman must know. A man who carries silent pain does not love less deeply. He often loves more profoundly. He just doesn't know how to let that love breathe. He struggles to hold emotional intimacy because he never learned emotional safety. So he replaces vulnerability with loyalty. He will commit silently. He will sacrifice silently. He will protect silently. But when his soul cries, the world hears nothing. The burden is not that men feel less. It is that they feel too much with nowhere to put it. When Jung spoke of the anima, the feminine soul within every man, he revealed a truth most people overlook. Men are not emotionless. They are often drowning in emotion, with no language to express it. The more disconnected a man becomes from his inner feminine energy, his sensitivity, intuition, receptivity, the more lost he becomes. And a lost man does not know how to love fully. He will confuse intensity for intimacy. He will bury his emotions until they return as shadow eruptions, coldness, emotional shutdown, sometimes rage. This is not weakness. This is emotional starvation. And yet, some women notice. They see beyond the armor. They sense the quiet grief behind his laughter. They feel the distance he tries to hide. They know he carries weight they cannot name. but they often make one mistake. They try to fix him. They pour love into his darkness, hoping it will heal him, but they misunderstand a deeper law. No one heals through being rescued. Healing begins when a person chooses truth over survival. A man will only open his heart when he feels safe, not controlled, not pressured, not analyzed, but seen. He doesn't need a woman who becomes his therapist. He needs one who speaks to his soul, one who understands that his silence isn't rejection, but protection, that his distance isn't disinterest, but fear, that his hesitation isn't love withheld, but love he doesn't yet know how to release. But here lies the paradox. Only a woman who has faced her own shadow can stand in the presence of his. Only a woman who has stopped chasing validation can meet a man without losing herself. Because a woman who fears abandonment will mistake his silence for rejection, and a man who fears emotional exposure will mistake her emotions for threat. Together, they will create a battlefield instead of a sanctuary. The journey begins not in demanding his truth, but in creating a space where truth is safe. There comes a moment in many relationships when a woman looks at the man beside her and senses a distance she cannot cross. He is present, yet far. He listens, yet reveals nothing. He holds her, yet something inside him feels missing, untouched, unreachable. She wonders if his silence means he doesn't care. But silence, for most men, is not the absence of emotion. It is the burial ground of it. The masculine shadow is forged in emotional isolation. From a young age, men are taught to endure life rather than feel it. They learn to calculate risk, uphold duty, and build resilience. But no one teaches them emotional translation. When sadness visited, it was renamed weakness. When fear appeared, it was camouflaged as anger. When emotional pain surfaced, they were told to man up. So they did. They built fortresses around their hearts and called it strength. But a fortress does not differentiate between enemies and those who come in peace. It blocks them all. Men carry a silent fear of emotional exposure because, to them, emotion equals danger. Not because they lack courage, but because they learned that emotion invites loss. Loss of control, loss of respect, loss of acceptance. Many men once tried to open their hearts, only to be ridiculed, misunderstood, or betrayed. The memory stayed. Trust became selective. Vulnerability felt expensive. But when a man buries his truth long enough, the burial becomes identity. He forgets how to speak from the soul. Instead of emotional truth, he offers logic. Instead of vulnerability, he offers solutions. Instead of softness, he offers distance. He is not cold, he is cautious. He is not heartless, he is armored. So why does he stay silent? Because silence has always been his shield. It has protected him from conflict he doesn't know how to win, emotional conversations he cannot navigate, fears he cannot name. He does not silence himself because he has nothing to say. He silences himself because he has too much to say and fears he will not survive the release of it. The truth is that men often suffer in quiet, invisible ways. They do not collapse publicly. They deteriorate privately. Depression in men rarely looks like sadness. It looks like exhaustion. Anxiety in men rarely looks like worry. It looks like irritability. Emotional pain in men rarely looks like tears. It looks like isolation. And yet, he loves, he feels, he hopes, he dreams of connection, but connection terrifies him because it requires emotional nakedness, and nakedness has never been safe. So he builds his life around strength, purpose, and discipline. But beneath it all is a question he cannot outrun. Would anyone choose me? Not for what I do, but for who I am beneath what I never show? Every man lives with this silent question, though few admit it. This is why the men who seem the strongest often carry the deepest emotional scars. They are protectors by nature. but they rarely feel protected themselves. They give loyalty before they ever receive understanding. They sacrifice silently and apologize quickly even when they're not wrong, because peace matters more to them than pride. Yet inside they fear one thing: will anyone stay if they ever see my brokenness? So he loves cautiously. He tests emotional waters like a soldier stepping into a minefield. He watches how a woman reacts to his flaws. He notices if she attacks when he confesses a weakness. He studies whether she listens to understand or listens to collect ammunition. He sees whether she uses his honesty as a bridge or as a weapon. And if even once his vulnerability is mishandled, he closes the gates of his heart with quiet finality. He will still be kind. He will still be present. He will still be loyal. But he will not open again. Yet there is a deeper truth. No matter how strong his walls, the soul still seeks wholeness. As Jung wrote, the unconscious will continue to surface until it is made conscious. Meaning, a man will either confront his emotional wounds willingly, or his unresolved pain will choose moments to erupt without warning. Silent suffering always finds a voice eventually. Some women misinterpret his emotional restraint and assume he lacks depth. But emotional detachment is not a lack of love, it is a defense against the terror of being consumed by it. Men love fiercely, but they reveal slowly. They can share their bodies easily, their time somewhat, their energy selectively, but their soul is sacred territory. And yet, when a man finally feels emotionally safe, something extraordinary happens. His eyes soften, his presence deepens. His words carry weight not because he speaks more, but because he no longer runs from truth. He begins to trust love, not as a risk, but as a sanctuary. He doesn't just show up, he arrives. But he will only cross that bridge when he senses one rare and powerful thing: emotional safety. He does not need perfection. He does not need endless emotional digging. He does not need a woman to fix him. He needs a space where emotional truth does not cost him peace. A place where words are handled carefully, where honesty is not used against him, where silence is not punished, and where presence matters more than performance. For some women, this level of emotional patience feels heavy. For others, it feels holy. Because when a man awakens emotionally, he doesn't just become more expressive, he becomes more whole. And a whole man does not fear commitment, intimacy, or devotion. A whole man does not run from love, he protects it, he values it, he builds it, he honors it. But before a woman can help awaken the heart of a guarded man, she must confront her own emotional patterns, or she will mistake his healing process for rejection. And the cycle of misunderstanding will continue. There is a reason the connection between a guarded man and a sensitive woman often feels both magnetic and fragile. Two souls can recognize each other long before they speak the same emotional language. He yearns for peace but fears exposure. She yearns for closeness but fears abandonment. Without awareness, their wounds begin to dance before their hearts do. The woman who meets a guarded man thinks at first that his quietness is mystery. But over time, she realizes it is not mystery. It is protection. He is slow to respond not because he doesn't care, but because he is afraid of giving the wrong answer. He pauses before expressing himself, not because he lacks emotion, but because he fears his emotions will be misunderstood. He takes time alone not because he wants distance, but because solitude is the only place he has ever been allowed to feel without judgment. Yet if her own wounds are still raw, she misreads his emotional caution as emotional rejection. When he withdraws to manage stress, she assumes he is losing interest. When he becomes silent during emotional discussions, she thinks he is shutting her out. When he tells her he needs time to process, she interprets it as a threat. And the moment she feels threatened, she reacts, not from wisdom, but from fear. She over-explains. She over-pursues. She overanalyzes. Not because she lacks self-control, but because her nervous system learned long ago that love leaves without warning. In her past, silence meant danger. Emotional distance meant abandonment. So now she tries to pull him closer, faster than he is ready to come. But when she does, he retreats deeper, overwhelmed not by her love, but by her urgency. And so the cycle begins. He withdraws to feel safe. She chases to feel secure. The more she chases, the more he withdraws. The more he withdraws, the more she aches. But this tension is not a sign of incompatibility. It is a sign of unhealed polarity. 2 wounded. Inner children trying to love each other using survival patterns instead of soul truth. This is why Jung warned that until one makes the unconscious conscious, it will rule their lives and they will call it fate. Many relationships do not end because love is absent. They end because emotional fear masquerades as truth. What neither understands is that both are fighting battles they never recognized. He carries a shame he cannot name, the shame of emotional suffocation. He fears being trapped by emotional intensity he is not prepared to navigate. He fears being judged when he finally expresses what lives inside him. He fears being told, once again, that who he truly is, sensitive, complex, layered, is not enough. She carries a wound she cannot soothe, the wound of emotional invisibility. She fears being unloved if she stops giving. She fears being forgotten if she stops reminding. She fears losing someone she loves simply because she waited too long to hold them close. Her heart does not chase out of weakness. It chases because abandonment taught her urgency. But there is a truth few understand. Emotional urgency destroys emotional attraction. Just as anger suffocates apology, emotional pressure suffocates vulnerability. When a woman pushes a guarded man to open before he feels safe, he interprets it as emotional invasion. The masculine heart is like a fortress not to protect arrogance, but to protect tenderness. He does not open to intensity. He opens to consistency. He opens to trust. He opens to softness. The secret is not in prying him open. It is in helping him feel safe enough to walk out on his own. But emotional safety cannot exist where emotional reactivity rules. If she responds to his silence with accusation, he will protect himself with distance. If she responds to his need for space with panic, he will retreat further. If she demands emotional intimacy before trust is built, he will shut down completely. Yet, when she responds with presence instead of pressure, he softens. When she listens without trying to control the outcome, he begins to speak. When she holds space without judgment, he begins to feel. And once he feels, freely, fully, he begins to awaken. However, emotional safety is not only her responsibility. He too must confront his patterns, or he will unintentionally teach her that love is a one-sided effort. He must understand that emotional avoidance does not protect connection. It corrodes it. He must recognize that emotional expression is not weakness. It is masculine strength in its highest form. A man capable of emotional mastery is not controlled by his feelings. He is liberated by his truth. But truth demands courage. And courage for a man is not found in battle or hardship. Courage is found in the willingness to feel, to speak honestly without performance, to stay present without withdrawing, to love without self-protection. Every man must eventually face this moment, the threshold between survival and connection. He will either remain in the fortress of emotional safety, living a life of repressed longing, or he will take the path of the awakened masculine, stepping into vulnerability without fear of losing his power. Because true power is not built in solitude. It is forged in emotional integrity. What is emotional integrity? It is the commitment to truth over comfort. It is the willingness to speak honestly rather than silently resent. It is the courage to set boundaries without aggression. It is the desire to lead with calm strength, not control. Emotional integrity is when a man says, "I will meet conflict with clarity and love, not withdrawal or destruction." A woman does not need perfection from a man. She needs emotional integrity. She needs to trust that his words are real, that his actions align with his heart, and that he will not disappear the moment emotions deepen. If he can offer her that, she will offer him everything. And when two souls meet with this level of courage, their love is no longer a reaction to loneliness. It becomes a sanctuary built on respect, honesty, and spiritual growth. They do not escape their shadows. They work through them. Together, a relationship turns sacred not when there are no wounds, but when both souls are willing to meet their truth with courage. The silent pain most men carry cannot be dissolved by time, routine, or quiet tolerance. It can only be healed through transformation, through consciously stepping out of survival patterns and into emotional truth. But transformation never happens in comfort. It happens in confrontation, first with the self, then with the bond. Emotional transformation begins only when a man is willing to face what he has always avoided: stillness. Because in stillness, the noise of distraction fades, the bravado of survival dissolves, and the truth he avoided begins to surface. Truth is not polite. It demands to be faced. And the truth inside many men is that they have been starving emotionally for years without realizing it. They learned to function with their hearts half closed, to achieve without fulfillment, to give without receiving, to love without being loved fully in return, because they never allowed themselves to be seen. But a man can only run from his emotions for so long before the soul rebels. Jung wrote that what we resist persists, not because life is cruel, but because the psyche demands wholeness. A man cannot bury sadness forever without also burying joy. He cannot numb pain without numbing passion. In defending himself from heartbreak, he unknowingly builds a wall against connection. So he becomes emotionally half alive, safe, stable, functional, respected, but not fully human. Something always feels missing, but he cannot name it. That missing piece is his emotional truth. Yet there is a silent invitation life places in his path. A woman who does not fear his depth. She does not manipulate him emotionally. She does not compete with his strength. She does not demand access to his inner world. Instead, she waits with presence. She speaks to him in a language he forgot he understood, the language of energy, of emotional intelligence, of spiritual patience. She does not force him to open. She reminds him that he still wants to. She asks questions no one has asked him before. What do you need when you're hurting? What do you fear most in love? When did you stop trusting your emotions? What truth have you been carrying alone? These questions do not come from pressure. They come from pure feminine awareness, the kind that does not pry but invites, the kind that does not interrogate but explores. And when faced with this, something inside him begins to shift, not all at once but slowly, quietly. Her presence does not demand he prove his masculinity. It allows him to step into it authentically. And that is when emotional awakening begins. But this awakening is not a straight path. Healing is never linear. There are days when he opens effortlessly, and then days when he retreats without warning, afraid of how deeply he now feels. He fears being consumed by emotion, so he shuts down temporarily. He fears needing someone, so he tries to create distance. He fears losing himself in love, so he tests her to see if she will remain steady. It is not manipulation, it is protection. But protection can still hurt. The feminine heart must be strong to hold space for this phase, but not blindly loyal. Because love without boundaries becomes self-destruction. A woman must love with compassion but stand with self-respect. She must understand his wounds without inheriting them. She must allow his process without losing her emotional center. If she sacrifices her emotional safety to preserve the connection, she will become resentful, and resentment kills intimacy faster than distance. So, how does she love a man who carries silent pain without abandoning herself in the process? By mastering emotional polarity. True, feminine power is not control. It is influence. She does not chase clarity. She becomes clarity. She does not demand honesty. She invites it by being safe to confide in. She does not try to fix him. She inspires him to rise. She does not collapse when he pulls away. She remains grounded in her worth. She does not beg for love. She embodies it. And here lies the paradox that liberates both. When she stops trying to pull him open, he chooses to open on his own. Because the masculine does not awaken through pressure, it awakens through purpose. A man does not transform when told what to do. He transforms when he sees truth clearly and chooses it himself. That is masculine awakening. A healed man is not emotionless. He is emotionally disciplined. He does not avoid conflict. He seeks resolution. He does not fear deep love. He sees it as his responsibility to protect and nurture it. He does not dominate. He leads with integrity. He does not submit to ego. He serves truth. He values peace more than pride, intimacy more than escape, depth more than distraction. He stops performing masculinity and begins embodying it, but few ever see this level of a man, because few demand it. Many women settle for men who are emotionally unavailable, believing that this is simply how men are. But emotional unavailability is not a masculine trait, it is a wounded one. Emotionally evolved men exist. They feel deeply, speak honestly, love bravely, and take responsibility for their minds, hearts, and actions. But to meet such a man, a woman must first become one thing: emotionally evolved herself. Because the love we attract matches the emotional standard we hold. A woman who knows her worth does not tolerate emotional avoidance disguised as masculinity. She does not invest in a man's potential while ignoring his patterns. She does not beg for effort. She inspires it. She does not chase. She attracts. She does not settle for half presence. She receives full devotion. Only then does a man rise into his highest nature, not because she saved him, but because she reminded him who he could become. Love reaches its highest form when it no longer feeds fear, when it no longer negotiates with insecurity, when it no longer apologizes for its depth. Yet most bonds fall apart long before they reach this level, not because the love was weak, but because neither soul was strong enough to meet love honestly. The silent pain most men carry will either drown a relationship or refine it. And the turning point comes when both understand a universal truth: pain is not the enemy. Avoidance is. The guarded man lives with silent wars inside. He has become so accustomed to carrying everything alone that he mistakes emotional isolation for emotional strength. He is praised for being stoic, but no one sees the exhaustion in his eyes. He is admired for being independent, but no one asks how it feels to have no safe place to fall. He is respected for enduring storms in silence, but no one wonders who holds him when he breaks. So he loses himself behind earned armor, the very armor that now keeps love at a distance. But a man cannot awaken until he admits he longs for more than survival, more than routine, more than logical peace, more than duty. There is a desire he never names outwardly, but it lives inside him as relentlessly as breath. He wants to feel alive again, not just alive in body, but alive in soul. He wants fire, purpose, meaning, connection, something real enough to risk being seen. That longing is the key. Because the moment a man stops fearing emotional truth, his evolution begins. Yet no one evolves alone. Every soul who rises has confronted a mirror, sometimes delivered by love, sometimes by loss, sometimes by a person sent not to stay, but to awaken. Some women are mirrors for the masculine, unafraid of his shadow, unpersuaded by his ego, unmoved by performance. These are women who carry sacred feminine strength, not in noise, but in energy. She does not dominate. She evokes, not through pressure, but through presence. Around such a woman, a man begins to feel what he has long suppressed. But emotional awakening without emotional structure leads to chaos. For a bond to transform, two energies must meet in balance. He must bring stability to her heart as she brings oxygen to his soul. Without structure, emotion becomes chaos. Without tenderness, structure becomes prison. Love is not the merging of two bodies, nor even two hearts. It is the alignment of two souls, choosing growth over comfort. The man who decides to heal must confront himself. He must find the courage to walk into the chambers of his inner world where old betrayals still echo, where unmet grief still cries, where anger turned inward still poisons him in silence. But this time he does not run. He does not numb. He does not project. He sits with it. He listens. He breathes. He examines the beliefs that shaped his emotional life, the lies he inherited, the roles he played, the masks he wore. And instead of abandoning himself yet again, he chooses honesty. Honesty is the beginning of masculine freedom. Not external honesty, the easy kind that names facts, but soul honesty, the rare kind that admits, I'm afraid, I feel deeply, I want more, I don't want to lose myself anymore, I am ready to meet life fully. That confession changes everything, because once truth is spoken inside a man, he can no longer live half asleep. Half love no longer satisfies him. Half connection no longer sustains him. Half authentic living no longer interests him. He begins to show up differently, steadier, clearer, more accountable. He speaks his boundaries without aggression. He shares his emotions without shame. He no longer uses silence as a weapon, nor emotional distance as protection. He learns emotional literacy, not by becoming dramatic or unstable, but by expressing his experience with clarity. And when conflict arises, he no longer escapes. He stays. He engages. He listens. He leads. Resolution instead of retreating from emotion. This is the rise of the secure masculine, the man who is not ruled by fear or ego, the man who knows that emotional discipline is not suppression, but emotional responsibility. He does not blame his partner for his triggers. He uses them as paths to understanding himself. He does not seek comfort above truth. He seeks alignment above approval. He apologizes without humiliation and forgives without keeping score. His presence brings calm, not confusion. His love brings peace, not chaos. And when such a man loves, he does not hesitate. He chooses with both soul and spine. He values devotion, not as confinement, but as expansion. He does not fear giving his heart because he has learned to stand in his truth. He does not fear loss because he does not lose himself. And he does not run from love because he understands that love is not a prison. It is a responsibility he is honored to hold. But what of the woman walking beside him? She, too, has risen. She no longer clings to love out of fear. She no longer abandons herself to keep closeness. She no longer tries to fix, convince, or prove her worth. Instead, she embodies it. She is not hardened, but she is sovereign. Soft, but never small. Open, but never unguarded. She welcomes love, but does not beg for crumbs. Her value was never negotiable, and in choosing herself, she made room for truth to find her. Love in this form becomes something few ever see. Two souls choosing each other not out of need, but out of aligned purpose. They are no longer afraid of losing one another, because they have already found themselves. The silent pain most men carry no longer controls him. It taught him. it refined him, and in his healing, love became freedom, not fear. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.